I discovered my fiancé and my sister in bed together during my engagement party, and my parents asked me to stay silent to protect her reputation. I am a tenured professor at a large northeastern university, 42F. Since I'm still processing what happened at my wedding and, to be honest, I need some perspective, I need to explain what happened. Let me first briefly explain the dynamics of my family. Lisa, 38F, my younger sister, has always been our parents' favorite. Lisa entered the media industry and became a local TV personality, while I spent years conducting research and writing articles for academic purposes. Our parents were always telling me how successful and gregarious Lisa was. The partiality was brutally evident when I was growing up. Our parents paid top bucks for Lisa to enroll in theatrical classes. I was told to use what we had when I required equipment for my science projects. All our lives, this trend persisted. The only person who really encouraged me to pursue my academic goals was my dad's mother, my grandma Martha. "Elena, you have a gift in your mind," she would often tell me. "Don't allow someone to make you less bright." While my parents were occupied watching one of Lisa's TV segments, she joined me in celebrating the publication of my first research paper in a famous magazine. After putting a lot of effort into my job, I became one of the youngest female professors in my field. Even though it wasn't the life my parents had in mind, I created a life of which I was proud. Then, during an academic meeting, I met David, 44M. He was pleasant, intelligent, and seemed to have a unique understanding of me. After 2 years of dating, I was ecstatic when David proposed. How did my folks respond? "Well, at least you won't be alone with your books anymore." Even more telling was Lisa's response. With the same patronizing grin she had had since she was a young girl, she exclaimed, "At last. I was concerned that you wouldn't meet someone who could cope with your intensity." The celebration of my engagement took place at my parents' home. Lisa insisted on assisting with the arrangements, but her idea of assistance mainly consisted of offering suggestions that were more in line with her preferences and criticizing my selections. She began to visit our home regularly, particularly during my work hours. I assumed she was simply acting in her typical domineering manner. In retrospect, there were a lot of warning signs that I decided to overlook. The way Lisa would enter a room and David's gaze would follow her. How she would laugh at his jokes and touch his arm. Lisa started coming to our neighborhood at the same time that David was spending more and more late nights at the lab. I recall the final instance of normalcy before things went awry. I was standing in the bedroom from my early years, examining old pictures hanging on the wall. Several glitzy photos of Lisa were hidden below my graduation photo. It seemed appropriate, a fitting illustration of my role inside the family. However, what followed? Things took an unexpected turn at that point. Downstairs, the engagement celebration was in full force, and I became aware that I hadn't seen David in a while. I told myself he was probably just making a work call, so I went upstairs to look for him. I heard noises coming from my former bedroom at that moment. My hand was motionless on the doorknob while I stood there for a while. I opened the door even though I had a sneaking suspicion of what I would discover. David and Lisa were entangled on the bed where I grew up. I had spent many evenings studying for my PhD qualifications in the same bed. Lisa lacked even the grace to display embarrassment. "Oh, Elena, you should have known," she continued with that same condescending grin. "I always manage to achieve what I desire." The worst thing. Richard, 40M, a prosperous real estate developer, was Lisa's husband. While his wife ruined my engagement, he was gone on business, most likely closing another $1 million deal. I can't really recall what transpired next. In some way, my legs carried me down the hallway as I backed out of the room. David's voice carried that false sincerity I now knew all too well as he called after me, "Elena, hold on. It isn't what you believe." However, it was precisely what I had assumed. Before my parents caught me, I had already gone halfway down the steps. My expression must have told them everything. "Elena, sweetie, please don't make a scene," was my mother's initial statement. "Consider your sister's union. The marriage of my sister. Not the broken engagement I had. My heart isn't broken. The marriage of my sister." With a low, anxious voice, Dad joined in. "You are aware of Richard's fidelity issues. A prenuptial agreement exists. She might lose everything. Elena, please consider the impact this would have on the family." The family. The same family that had prioritized Lisa's needs at all times. The same family that had disregarded my accomplishments, disparaged my decisions, and now demanded that I shield their golden kid from the repercussions of her own behavior. I passed them and entered the crowded gathering. When I walked in, the room fell silent. They must have noticed something in my face. David came up the stairs, buttoning his shirt hurriedly. Her flawless makeup was a little smudged a few moments later. My voice was unusually steady as I continued. I apologize, but the engagement is off. I have to go, but please enjoy the food and beverages. Whispers and gasps began instantly. Behind me, I could hear my mother's shoes clicking quickly on the floor, but I continued. I went outside to my car after grabbing my keys. David was beckoning me, demanding an opportunity to clarify. Mom was crying for commitment to the family. Lisa watched from the doorway with the same angry smile, strangely mute. I packed up everything that belonged to David, including his priceless collection of rare scientific papers, books, and clothes, and drove directly home. Everything was placed in boxes. After renting a storage container and dropping off his items, I sent him the address and code to get entry. I then blocked all of his social media accounts, his email, and his phone number. My relatives began sending me messages right away, including guilt trips about how this would ruin Lisa's marriage, pleas to stay quiet about what had happened, and cautions about family loyalty. I also blocked their numbers. I came to a realization that evening while I was sitting by myself in my partially vacant flat. This was more than merely David's treachery. This was the result of my family always picking Lisa over me. I had finally had enough of them choosing her happiness above mine. I inhaled deeply, made a glass of wine for myself, and started methodically clearing out their contact details from my phone. Every time I deleted something, I felt lighter. I was choosing myself for the first time in my life. I put myself into my work after that night. My haven was the university. I worked in the lab for several hours as my research team worked on a molecular biology breakthrough project. Despite noticing my alteration, my co-workers were gracious enough to keep their distance. Richard, the husband of Lisa, arrived at my workplace 3 weeks following the engagement celebration. His normally spotless suit was a little rumpled, and he appeared exhausted. Simply put, "I need to know everything," he said. I was honest with him. He grabbed the armrest of his chair and listened in quiet, his knuckles white. After I was done, he got up, fixed his tie and remarked, "I appreciate your candor. You have at least one family member who respects the truth." Then he went away. My parents' efforts to get in touch with me grew more urgent. Voicemails about mending the family were left by Mom. Dad emailed about forgiving others and moving on. It was surprised that Lisa remained completely silent on the radio. My grandma later told me that Richard was divorcing them and had left their home. My pillar of support throughout this period was my grandmother Martha. She would sit with me, share stories about her personal challenges, and bring home cooked meals. It was her opinion that the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. I was resolved to turn my suffering into something useful. So I concentrated on drafting my next research article. One of the best journals in my profession approved the work. A professor at another university sent me a congrats email the day it was published. Michael, 45M, was his name, and he was an expert in research facility architecture. Michael's email was kind but professional. He remarked that he had read my earlier work and that our departments might work together. I was drawn to his writing style because it demonstrated more than simply professional etiquette. There was a sincere interest in the science. We started a communication regarding the relationship between research efficiency and laboratory design once I replied. Over time, our emails grew longer and more intimate. He talked about how his own family had helped him pursue his unusual career path of integrating scientific study with building. I really ran into him one day when I was buying coffee at the school cafe. I spilt my coffee all over his white shirt while he was at our university for a conference. As I assisted him in cleaning up, Michael grinned and commented, "Well, this is quite different from our email conversations," rather than being upset. He asked if he could get me a coffee substitute. I paused. I had vowed to never date again after David, especially in academic settings. However, Michael was different in some way. Perhaps it was the way his eyelids wrinkled when he grinned or the fact that he made no effort to impress me with his academic background. Observing my hesitancy, he laughed, "I promise I'm not a serial killer. Just a clumsy architect who'd like to replace your coffee and maybe hear more about your latest research in person." "Just coffee," I firmly stated. For the first time in months, I felt at ease as we sat and chatted. David was not like Michael at all. When I told him about my work, he listened. Really listened. With refreshing candor, he told tales of his own endeavors, triumphs and setbacks. He asked if he might see me again before heading out to his next conference session. To my astonishment, I said yes. I sat in my office that night and gazed out over the campus. I felt hope, something I hadn't felt in a long time, when the quad was covered in long shadows from the sinking sun. Not only for a possible romance, but also for the chance to create a life that was really mine, free from Lisa's persistent influence and my family's expectations. My mother texted me, "Lisa is having a hard time." And my phone chimed. Richard is acting irrationally. She requires her sister. I took a good look at the mail before deleting it without replying. After being torched, certain bridges ought to remain burned. Rather, I opened my email and started composing a letter to Michael regarding a joint study project I was considering. I grinned as I typed, recalling how his eyes had brightened when we talked about the possibilities of multidisciplinary study. Perhaps, just possibly, this was the start of something genuine. Something that was exclusively mine, unaffected by the poisonous relationships of my past. Update 1, 6 months have passed since my previous post. Regarding Michael, the architect I actually ran into at the campus cafe, many of you requested an update. That coffee date ended up into something I never would have imagined. Following our first meeting, we began discussing our joint study project over video calls. Over time, these business-related conversations turned into lengthy discussions on anything from childhood dreams to beloved books. Michael found my passion for academics fascinating. In contrast to my family, who always considered it as a weakness. There was no plan for our first actual date. We met to go over the specifics of the project while he was in town for another conference. We both were aware that we were hungry as the meeting was running late. We eventually found ourselves in a small Italian eatery close to campus, where we chatted and shared a plate of pasta until the waiters began stacking seats. I was particularly struck by how different he seemed from David. Michael did more than just skim my most recent research publication when I mentioned it. He read it carefully and returned with insightful questions. With refreshing candor, he discussed his own professional struggles, such as a recent project that had over its budget. When he inquired about my family, it was the true test. His genuine desire prompted me to open up, despite my initial reluctance. I filled him in on everything, including Lisa, my parents' partiality, and yes, the disastrous engagement party. He just listened, without the customary uncomfortable answers or attempts to protect familial relationships. He then showed me that he really understood by sharing his own experience with a competitive brother. Although our joint endeavor is progressing nicely, we have taken care to keep our personal and professional relationships apart. We mostly see each other on the weekends because his department is in a different state. In fact, the distance has been beneficial since it has allowed us to naturally build trust. He asked me to meet his family last weekend. Considering my past, I was afraid, but it was not what I had anticipated. I was welcomed right once by his mother, Linda, who shared stories about Michael's early architectural efforts and showed me his awkward childhood photos. It seems that he once attempted to use his father's power tools to rebuild their garage. "We've heard about your research work," Linda said, pulling me aside, which was the most bizarre moment. "Michael is constantly praising your brilliance." It was expressed with sincere pride and interest rather than comparison or jealousy. I neglected to add that I recently received an offer at work that would allow me to work closer to Michael's university. It's a prominent position that would greatly boost my career. His initial reaction when I informed him about it was, "That's incredible. Describe the research opportunities in detail." I was ecstatic with my accomplishment and said nothing about what it meant for us. I still haven't agreed to the job. I'm hesitant to make significant life adjustments for a romance after everything that happened with my family and David. However, knowing that Michael would be there for me no matter what, I feel for the first time that I can base this choice on what's best for my career. Last week, my grandmother Martha met him and approved of him. Simply, "He sees you," she said. "Not who he wants you to be, but who you are." It has been quiet, to be honest, and I haven't heard from Lisa or my parents in months. Healing sometimes entails letting go of those who don't value you, even if they are family. Update 2. My last update regarding Michael was 3 months ago. I want to share this with the group who helped me get through my worst moments since a lot has transpired. I agreed to work at the university close to Michael's. The change was welcomed by my research team, and we have established a method for remote communication. The main reason the transfer has gone smoothly is that I took my time and properly planned everything. Last weekend, the most significant change occurred. I was in Michael's kitchen preparing dinner with him. Instead of the butter I expected, he was holding a little box when he turned back to retrieve something from the refrigerator. He didn't get down on one knee or give a long speech. "You know how we've been talking about combining lab design with research efficiency," he added instead. "Well, I've also been considering merging our lives. What are your thoughts?" The ring was very different from the gaudy one David had given me. It was exquisite and simple. Michael's following statement, "I know your work is important to you," truly touched me. A matching desk lamp is included with the ring for use during late-night research sessions. "Yes," I said, simultaneously crying and laughing. We are invited to an engagement celebration by Michael's parents. Regarding it, Linda has been really kind, often asking if I'm okay with the plans. Michael immediately offered that we forgo the party entirely when I hesitated. However, we're having a small gathering. Just close friends and family, because I don't want my past to control my future. Richard, the ex-husband of my former sister, sent me an unexpected email. He said he's doing well with his new companion and praised me. He appears content now that the divorce is official. Hearing from him was strangely therapeutic. Martha, my grandmother, is overjoyed. She gave me a hug and muttered, "This one's a keeper," after I showed her the ring. She is correct. The small things, like how he turned one of his spare rooms into a makeshift home office for me with a whiteboard for research notes, are what show how much Michael cares. Somehow, most likely through extended family, my parents learned about the engagement. Mom left a voicemail stating that they would like to participate in the celebration and make amends. I have not answered. It's preferable to keep some doors closed. Update 3. My engagement update was 2 months ago, and I wish I could report that everything has gone well since then. I must convey the unexpected turn the wedding preparations have taken. At the lakefront home of Michael's family, we were organizing a small ceremony. Linda has been fantastic. She has always respected our wishes while assisting with arrangements. Only family members, close friends and coworkers who truly support us were on the carefully picked guest list. Then I got an email yesterday that really chilled me. According to what my mother wrote, she and Dad decided to invite Lisa to the wedding. Their logic? She's your only sister, and family should be together on special days. I called Michael right away. "Whatever you want to do, I'm with you," he answered before I could even articulate my panic. "We have the day, not them." I was able to think clearly thanks to his cool backing. When I told my grandmother Martha, she became enraged. "After everything they've done," she said, "they have no right." I knew I had to deal with this on my own, but she offered to run interference. Before sending it, I wrote and revised my response multiple times. "Mom and Dad, I made it very plain that I didn't want Lisa to attend my wedding. This cannot be discussed. You won't be accepted either if you're unable to respect this barrier. Elena." Their reaction was expected. About family togetherness, Mom called in tears. Dad wrote a long email about forgiving others and letting go. They even had some family members contact them on their behalf. Michael has had tremendous support from his parents during this time. Linda called to reassure me that only those invited would be allowed entry to the location due to security measures. Michael's brother James volunteered to deal with any unwelcome visitors directly. My research team's support was the most unexpected. They offered to surround me with a protective circle during the wedding after I brought up the matter in a lab meeting, looking agitated. My department director, Dr. Anderson, even offered to accompany me on my wedding. Last night, Michael and I went over our wedding arrangements. If it made me feel safer, he proposed that we alter the location, the date, or even go on an elopement. However, I no longer wish to allow my family's behavior to dictate my decisions. Therefore, we're sticking to our original intentions while taking extra safety measures. Individual QR codes will be included in the invitations, security will be in place at the location, and most importantly, our chosen family and real friends will be present to support us. Last weekend, my grandmother assisted me in choosing my wedding gown. She said something that made me cry as I stood in front of the mirror. "Dear, you're gleaming. Because you're at last free to be who you are, not because of the outfit." Though I'm more resilient than I was previously, I'm still anxious about what Lisa might try. There is more to our wedding than just Michael and I becoming husband and wife. It's about choosing genuine love over poisonous familial relationships, happiness over drama, and tranquility over upheaval. Update 4. It took place. Lisa appeared to my wedding wearing an outfit that looked to be meant to attract attention and was obviously pregnant, despite all of our safety procedures and security measures. She had somehow entered through a service entrance thanks to our parents. Linda hurried in with a pale face when I was in the wedding room. "I'm very sorry, Elena, she was brought by them. Your mother made a fuss about not excluding an expectant woman when we attempted to stop them. She didn't have to complete." My parents had already put Lisa in the front row, but Michael sent his brother James to deal with the problem right away. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw the same smug expression on her face that I had witnessed at my engagement party with David. I inhaled deeply and turned to face the mirror. My wrist was adorned with a handcrafted bracelet fashioned by my research team, the exquisite clothing grandmother Martha had assisted me in selecting, and Michael's first present to me, a lovely necklace including a little microscope pendant. "What do you want to do?" When I called Michael, he inquired. "They can still be taken out, or we can put it off. I support you no matter what you decide." I realized then that I had allowed them to dictate my happiness all my life. "Not today. We're getting married," I stated confidently. "They can stay, But I'm done letting them write my story. The ceremony got underway. Dr. Anderson, the director of my department, escorted me down the aisle with pride. Everything else vanished when I saw Michael waiting for me with love and compassion in his eyes. We exchanged vows that we had written ourselves. Everyone laughed when Michael pledged to constantly support my scientific endeavors, adding, even if it means converting more rooms into lab space. From peer reviews to late-night science talks, I vowed to be his partner in everything. The reception followed. I believed I was ready for anything, but I was surprised by what transpired next. Lisa pretended to be the maid of honor and got to her feet, holding a glass of champagne. She began by describing how she had saved me from making terrible mistakes, and how she was always looking out for her big sister. Beneath the table, I felt Michael's fingers clasp mine. I noticed my research team stiffening up, poised to step in. Linda was getting up from her chair a little. However, for the first time in my life, I was able to fight my own fights without assistance. Calmly and professionally, as I would have addressed a lecture hall, I stood up, holding my own glass. I think it's time for the bride to make a toast of her own, I replied. What came next? Well, that merits an update of its own. Let's simply say that speaking your truth with dignity might sometimes be the best form of retaliation rather than being silent. Update 5. Here is what transpired when I made my toast after my previous update regarding Lisa attending my wedding. As I stood there, staring at my sister's arrogant face, I experienced an odd feeling of peace. I'd been lecturing academically for years, so I knew how to control a room. I started by saying, for those who don't know me well, I'm a scientist. We work with truth and facts. So allow me to share some family-related truths. There was a silence in the room. My sister, who was married at the time, was in bed with my then fiancé 3 years ago. My parents were more concerned with preserving Lisa's reputation than with my wounded heart when I found them. At last, Lisa's smile wavered. Tom, her husband, whom she had brought as a sign of family unity, suddenly got to his feet. His voice was tight as he asked, "The baby, Tom? Is that why you've been avoiding the paternity test?" There was an overwhelming quiet in the room. Lisa placed a protective hand over her growing tummy. I went on, speaking steadily. There has always been a trend in my family. Lisa's happiness comes first. They pleaded with me to remain silent after she ruined my first engagement. They helped her get in when she arrived here without permission. But today, I said, is about true family, the type that makes you stronger rather than weaker. My research group, who take pride in my accomplishments. Michael's family, who embraced me with unmatched warmth. My grandmother, who never failed to recognize me for who I am. Tom was the first to go. Lisa called his name and ran after him. My mother was crying as my parents followed. The room's atmosphere abruptly lightened when the door closed behind them. Then my grandmother got up and held up her glass. In her own words, to Elena and Michael. To truth, to real love, and to the family we choose. The remainder of the reception was excellent. Everyone relaxed without the burden of pretense. My study team secretly practiced a surprise dance, which they performed. I found out the following morning that Tom had requested a paternity test and filed for divorce. For once, I didn't feel obligated to assist in picking up the pieces when Lisa's meticulously constructed world fell apart. Update 6. A year has passed since my wedding and the amazing things that happened there. I wanted to give the community that helped me through everything one last update because so much has changed. Michael and I are expecting our first child, which is the major news initially. My first emotion upon seeing the positive test result was one of terror. It brought back memories of my own familial relationships. However, Michael's answer was ideal. He wrapped his arms around me and said, "This kid's going to have the best mom, a brilliant scientist who knows how to love unconditionally." The family of Michael and Linda has been amazing. Linda was thrilled about my latest research article as well as the baby when we told them. "This child is going to have such an amazing role model," she remarked, describing my work in the journal. I've heard tidbits of information regarding Lisa's situation from my grandmother Martha. Tom's suspicion that the baby wasn't his was validated by the paternity test. She is currently trying to start again while living with our parents. The reality of being a single mother has replaced the opulent lifestyle and fancy clothing. I occasionally have a slight sense of sadness, not precisely guilt, for the way things turned out. Michael's statement, "Consequences aren't cruel, they're just truth in action," comes to mind next. I'm doing well with my research. Michael and I worked together to build a new laboratory, and the university recently granted money for it. His inventive architecture and my research needs make for the ideal combination of our skills. Our work collaboration has only improved our friendship on a personal level. In my new lab, our baby will have a dedicated space, a secure enclosed play area, where they may be close to me as I work. Michael created it himself, adding all the safety features he could think of while still making it engaging for a child's growth. My circumstances haven't changed much, but I have. I no longer feel the need to compete for attention or prove myself. In our household, there is no hierarchy of love or success, only mutual understanding, support, and sincere joy in one another's accomplishments. Grandmother Martha, who is thrilled to be a great-grandmother, comes to visit frequently. She's already crocheting the baby little lab jackets while entertaining us with tales of my own early science projects. Even now, my parents still make an effort to connect, generally through family. I'm not ready, but they want to be involved in their grandchild's life. Some wounds require real change rather than just time to heal. As I reflect on my path, I see that responsibility or blood relationships aren't the key to creating a meaningful family. It's about finding people that love you for who you are, celebrate your happiness, and encourage your aspirations. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. Although life isn't flawless, it is genuinely and delightfully mine.